Good morning. It is May the 11th, 9:38. This is a Budget and Public Employees Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier. Vice Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. Chair Aldrich.
Here.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Velasquez. 3 present.
With that, we have established a quorum. The next item of the agenda will be item number 5, Board Bills for Review, which will be Board Bill number 1, which is a FY27 fiscal year budget for the city of St. Louis. We're going to skip over to committee discussions. We have no resolutions for review, and the first item today will be the Water Division, followed by the Collector of Revenue, the Sheriff Office, a small break, Medical Examiner, and then we'll end the day with Information Technology Service Agency. So we'll get started and have our water department come on up, introduce themselves. Anybody else you have here from your team, we're pulling up the presentation, and then you can jump right into it. All right, good morning. Just make sure your mic is on, Director.
Good morning, Chair Aldrich and rest of the members of the committee. My name is Neeraj Patel. I'm the Director of Public Utilities. With me today here, I have Perla Burke, our Fiscal Manager, and Spencer Gould, our Special Assistant to the Water Commissioner. So, we've got a presentation of our FY27 budget here. And, you know, the Water Division as an enterprise, you know, obviously has a little bit different take on the budget process, but internally we do get requests from all of our sections, and then the admin section, you know, hears the budgets that have been presented by those operating sections, you know, deliberates on the funding that's available, makes cuts, you know, just like any budget process that is happening by another city department that is looking to get funded out of the general fund. So, next slide, please. All right, so I always like to start with our mission. It's to provide safe, reliable, and economical drinking water service for all who live, work, and play in the city of St. Louis. You know, our mission drives everything we do, you know, and our values, our vision are all tied into that mission. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so I mentioned that we're an enterprise fund of the city. You know, what that means is that, you know, our accounts cannot touch the accounts of other city departments. You know, the general fund is not accessible to us, but we do operate on the fees that we charge, the revenues that we have as an enterprise to do the services that we do to meet our mission. You know, we cannot actually take money from the general fund, and as such, all of our revenues are dedicated to the mission of providing safe, reliable, economical water. There are no profits. You know, all of the revenues go right back into the cost to operate the system. Next slide, please. So that system that we have, you know, it does cover, you know, approximately 65 miles of St. Louis. You know, we have over 90,000 service connections that are active, over 20,000 valves, over 15,000 fire hydrants, and over 1,300 miles of water mains. We do operate on pressure zones in the city. This is to provide the level of service with water pressure, you know, amongst the major elevation changes in the city. You can see those highlighted in that map there. You know, we do have 2 water treatment plants as well. Chandler Rocks plant at the north side of the city, and then Howard Bend plant out in Chesterfield that services the city from the west. We also have 2 storage reservoirs that have over 125 million gallons a day, or 1 million gallons of capacity, approximately equal to 1 day's worth of pumped water that we have today. Next slide, please. So I mentioned, you know, those 2 treatment plants. They produce 129 million gallons a day on average. Just for some context here, that's about 1/1000th of the flow of the Mississippi River. And the flow in the river obviously varies throughout the day, but you know, enough water to provide for the city of St. Louis passes by our intake at the Chandler Rocks treatment plant in about 80 seconds. And so there is a massive quantity of water coming through the Mississippi River. Similarly, the Missouri River water is, you know, equally impressive and one of the largest in the country. You know, we produce nearly 47 billion gallons of water annually. You know, this is a huge quantity, over 70,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I put some fun facts in there, but you know, we do monitor and test that water from river all the way, out into the distribution system with samples that we collect daily across the city. We test for over 150 potential contaminants, approximately 27,000 tests performed annually by the 2 labs that are state certified for drinking water. Next slide, please. So we're going to dive into some of the sections. Our administrative commissioner's office, that's where I work out of. We have the overall direction of the utility and the HR along with IT functions. And then our distribution system section is, the crews that work out in the streets, our meter and tap folks, our dispatch, some of the engineering for our distribution section. They are responsible to maintain the water mains, the valves, the fire hydrants. They inspect for leaks. They provide taps for new services. They have to ensure that that system is ready to deliver that high quality drink to the customers. Next slide, please. Our finance section, because we're an enterprise, performs a little bit larger role than in other city departments. They are fiscal and budgetary structure and control. They maintain all of the books. They process invoices. They ensure that the finances are being reported adequately too, and they have a huge role to play in the annual audit that we get through every year. Usually without any findings of significant changes that need to be made. So. Our supply and purification section, that is the treatment plants. They are the producers of the drinking water. They take that river water, muddy, murky, full of potential harmful contaminants, and turn it into that high-quality drinking water every day, that we come to rely on when we turn the faucet on in the morning. I mentioned again 2 treatment plants. There's a whole team of dedicated water professionals that are making sure that that product, the only utility that you ingest, is safe for human consumption and exceeds actually all of the drinking water most of the time. When it comes to the clarity of the water, our turbidity, our partnership for safe drinking water that we are charter members of for over 20 years have received the Director's Award for again, our process is good enough that we can get higher than that standard that's required for regulatory, and we're proud of that. We hear often, and we like to hear often, that the drinking water in the city of St. Louis is some of the best they've ever tasted. So, next slide, please. Our power and pumping section is at our treatment plants. It's part of the process to pressurize the water, to pump it out to the city, but it also actually brings river water up to the treatment process. These are the pump stations that we have, some of the power systems that we have at the treatment plants. We buy power from Ameren at 35,000 volts. They are responsible for that equipment in the substations, switch gears, the pump stations. And then our construction and maintenance group is another support staff for the plant operations, but also they go out in the distribution sometimes and support those operations as well. And so these are our construction trade laborers, the operators that we have of the heavy equipment and the construction equipment that we use for repairs at the treatment plants. They work every day to make sure that water is leaving that plant, and that they're supporting the maintenance activities of those treatment plants. Next slide, please. Our customer service staff is very important. They are the ones that are outward facing. They deal with the customers every day. They man the phones, they man the pay window at the Kings Highway office, and then of course also kind of monitor the email coming in as well for issues that people may have, account changes that people may be trying to make, questions on the bill, or lately some of the assistance programs that we have due to the ARPA funding. Our temporary assistance program keeps them quite busy, and then as we are shutting water off now, we have a steady stream of people calling to try to get help to get into a repayment plan, to get back on track, and they are receiving those payments and processing those applications as well. So, along with that group are the people who read the water meters, who do the shuts when necessary, and assist with activities through the customer service process. All right, so now we're going to get into our budget. Next slide, please. So again, our revenues support the operation. And so the revenue estimate is very important in the budget process. We do that early to try to anticipate how much money we may have available, try to evaluate the requests from all the operating sections, and then some of the more known costs that we project. This year we have a revenue estimate that is an increase from last year. This is largely due to the moratorium being lifted and our ability to start shutting and getting people paying again regularly, but also, we did have a CPI-U adjustment of 3% that just went into effect January 1 of this year as part of the last rate ordinance that was passed. Even so, that revenue estimate being higher, we have operating expenses that are, higher as well. And so one of the important things to remember is that to balance our budget, we have to make sure that we're using the revenue and any, funds that we may have in a reserve to meet that challenge. This year, we were not able to approve a lot of the necessary things that we need to approve to operate the division for this year coming. And so, our operating expenses sit at $84.2 million. This is lower than in years in the past. Next slide, please. So this is small text, a little difficult to read, but what it shows is that we have a balance. We have about $84.2 million, both on the revenue estimate side and the operating expense side. One of the big differences from years past that you'll see is that for over 7 years, we've been operating in a deficit. We've been borrowing from the Water Contingent Fund, borrowing from the Reserve Fund to make up that gap. We do not have that reserve fund available this year. That is why the budget is smaller this year. And so, we have had to cut things out from the budget, defer some known necessary things like, our treatment chemicals, our emergency anticipated spend, even down to our electrical power that we know consume. Next slide, please. So this is showing the actions that we've taken to achieve a balanced budget here. We've deferred $11.4 million in major projects, materials, supplies, equipment, and capital assets, as well as some of the known contractual services that we know we'll need to make it through the fiscal year. $3.8 million in non-capital equipment that was also deferred out of this budget. Again, these are things that we will need if we want to continue the level of service that we've been providing in the past, the reliable service that we aim to provide as part of our mission. And then amongst those, there's also quite a bit more smaller across-the-board deferrals. In years past, a lot of these things have been things that we've cut out that are, certainly necessary, but less necessary. I think what I'm trying to get at this year, we are cutting out things that are necessary in order to achieve a balanced budget because we do not have a reserve to pull from. Next slide, please. This is a comparison year over year, just kind of showing some of the changes. You'll see that personnel services went up slightly. Of course, every year that there is a new pay plan that's being considered, raises that are going into effect for city employees, we have to anticipate that we'll have an increase in that expense for the personnel services. Additionally, we've added a few positions that we know are going to be necessary in order to continue providing our mission. So you see a 3.8% increase there. We have cut money out, as I mentioned, that we know we'll need to provide the level of service that we've been providing, but had to cut out in order to provide a balanced budget. And so you can see 17% was cut out of materials and supplies that we will need to provide our services. Going down the line, we have other non-capital assets, capital assets, contractual services that we've cut as well out of the budget. In total, we're looking at a 5.7% decrease in our budget compared to last year. Next slide, please. So just to detail that a little bit more, we do have an increase anticipated in the personnel services, because of the positions that we've added. We always fully budget for those as we're required to do. And that's looking like $8.9 million anticipated in vacant positions. Again, we're going to try to fill all those positions that we added. Certainly some of the other ones where we have vacancies, and we'll get into the vacancies a little bit later, but that $8.9 million that may need to get reallocated for our treatment chemicals, for example, which we have budgeted short. $15.5 million is our anticipated need. We've reduced it to $9.6 million. I mentioned again that we have our electrical service that we've under budgeted for, again, to anticipate pulling that from our excess personnel services due to the vacant positions. And then again, the major projects and contracts that we have for services have decreased as well. Next slide, please. All right, so what this means is, this is not a sustainable budget we're presenting today. This is the budget that is balanced, based on the revenues that we are projecting, but it will not, have a component borrowed from a contingency fund that is depleted. It will have reductions and deferrals of necessary work that we do to provide our core services. It does not have enough money in there for emergency repair. So if we don't have, another revenue stream coming in after the fiscal year opens, we will have to decide which water mains that are leaking or broken that we can go without repairing, or what other expenses we can cut in order to make ends meet. I mentioned the treatment chemicals and the electrical power as well, and then it doesn't leave a lot of room for proactive maintenance or repairs, replacements of equipment that we know we need to replace that we've been stringing along past their useful service life at an additional expense because of that aged asset. We do have a rates and efficiency study that had been conducted. It's complete. You can find that on our website. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. And this is going to identify the long-term funding needs, to bridge this gap. Next slide, please. So, this line graph here shows our revenues and expenses. When we had the rate increase that passed, in 2023, it certainly started bringing those two lines back together. You can see the expenses just started growing. The gap was quite large. In some years, we were borrowing more than $10 million from the contingent fund. And over the years, we have not brought those two lines together. You certainly would hope that our revenues are higher than our expenses, especially as we run out of that contingent fund. And you can see that our expense line, projected, it dives down. That is because we've reduced our budget here. We've reduced what we know we'll need to continue operating, providing the level of service in order to have that meet our projected revenue. Next slide. And this is just another way to look at it. This is our reserve fund. We had built it up over time, a little over $35 million, close to $40 million. And then we had those 7 years of deficits that we borrowed and borrowed and borrowed from that fund. There is no fund remaining anymore. And so, the emergency rate increase certainly did help in FY23, FY24. You can see that those deficits started to shrink, but we also had impacts from inflationary actions, impacts from rising emergency expenses because of the failures that we had and the repairs that were necessary. So, it just didn't do enough. I think in hindsight, we can see that clearly. At the time, it was thought that it would stabilize things. It just wasn't enough, and it was also reactive. That emergency increase was significant, 20% increases, effectively 44%. We knew we'd have to follow that with another set of increases. We were going to become, instead of reactive, proactive. And that's what we're working through with our rates efficiency study that we just completed and legislation that we're looking to put out there. Next slide, please. So the major categories we have, personnel services, you can see in this chart, year over year, we have to spend more to keep the division, staffed. and we've been making some strides in reducing our vacancy. You can see this year there's a large excess in that personnel services. That's where we anticipate having that $8.9 million to borrow from if we can't fill all those positions to make up for the gaps in the other categories. But I will say the gaps in the other categories far exceed that excess that we have in the personnel services. So materials and supplies, you can see year over year continues to go up. The equipment, a lot of times we'll make do with what we have, string it out a little bit further, keep that down as low as we can, but at some point you do have to buy new equipment, to keep that service provided. And then our contractual services is where we've seen some of the biggest increases in our budget over the years. This is certainly due to the emergency failures that we've had, the main breaks, issues at the treatment plants, and then some of the staffing that we have just can't handle all of that in-house, so we have contracts, to provide additional service there. And then the project work has been a little inconsistent there. It's really just what's absolutely necessary, what we think we can try to achieve, but we know we're continuing to have pressure from the inflationary actions, from the emergencies, and so it's been difficult to do projects on an annual basis as well without an infrastructure fund, that is capable of providing for multi-year projects, larger projects, and so you can see it's just down pretty low there. Next slide. Our chemical expenses are actually somewhat stabilizing. In our rate sufficiency study, we have, categories where we have, anticipated increases, projections based on indices that, those financial consultants use to project future expenses for the next 5 years. And in the chemical space, we have seen a little bit more stability, where we had, quite a bit of fluctuation in the past. Next slide. This just kind of dives into some of the nuance of that. But again, the big thing here is we've only budgeted for $9.6 million. Though the costs have started to stabilize, we have an anticipated $5.9 million that will be short for the treatment chemicals that we know we'll need to treat that drinking water. We plan on pulling some of that from the personnel services excess that is in the vacancy there. But one of the things we know is that we really could achieve savings in this expense if we had more efficient treatment facilities, if we had less water that was being lost in the system due to the amount of leaks and breaks that we have. That is a huge expense to treat that water, to pump that water, to use energy to get that water pressurized for the system, and then just have it leak in the system. All systems have non-revenue water, that is leakage, but ours is significantly higher due to the aging infrastructure and the distribution system. Next slide, please. So this is just a trend of the personnel services, that bar chart that we saw before. Again, it just continues to go up, obviously with the pay plans that get passed, but also we've been adding TO positions. We'll have a slide later on that'll show that. Next slide, please. So this is one of our bigger expenses. Our staff, $36 million. It takes a lot of people to operate the division, and over the years we've had a decline. We're seeing so many emergencies now that we do need more staff, and we've been adding that staff. We'll break it out a little bit further down the line, but we have decreased our vacancy rate. So last year it was 26%. We're down to 23%, and this is actually with us adding TO positions. So I think we're making some headway there. We're working very closely with the Department of Personnel to solve challenges with specific positions. Certainly the new pay plan will help that as well. But we continue to see increases in some of our contractual services. So hiring city employees, civil servants certainly helps us in the long run here. Our contractual expenses, again, we're decreasing that in our budget, not because we think we'll spend less, but because we know we have to provide a balanced budget here. So it will be challenging to maintain our level of service with this amount of decrease in our contractual services. Next slide, please. All right, so we use these emergency contractors for emergency water main breaks, equipment failures at the treatment plants, pump repairs. Our intake structures need constant maintenance and rehabilitation, but with the funding that we have, we do repairs on those. And so, we're budgeting $30 million, but this is smaller than we've had in the years past, and we typically consider having to bring more money into that category, with any excess that we may have in personnel services down the road, based on the amount of usage that we have of contract services. You can see our main breaks continue to fluctuate, but increase overall in trend. Next slide, please. So the bars on this chart are TO positions, and as you can see, over the years from FY15, a little bit over 340. In FY26, we are projecting or requesting 378 positions in our TO. This is more than the 369 that we had last year, but even so, we've been filling these positions. We've been hiring at the Water Division. It's been very challenging with the competition that's out there. It's been challenging to retain our employees, but we have been working with the Department of Personnel to make progress here. And we've reduced from 26% vacancy to 23% vacancy, through necessary adjustments to salaries to retain employees that are looking for, other employment if they can't get a salary that is commensurate or competitive. And also the hires that we're seeing coming in order to fill these positions, we are having to seek approval for increased starting salaries for seasoned professionals, people with experience, in order to be competitive. Next slide, please. This shows within our programs, within our different operating sections, where the vacancies lie. It does vary some. We have higher vacancies in some of our trades positions, for example, 46%. It has been very difficult getting qualified tradespeople to come work for the Water Division. These are the people that keep the treatment plants operational, with the electricians, with the carpenters, with the machinists, the maintenance mechanics that work on our pumping units, and the people who help with the grounds, our water maintenance technicians who, for example, clean the settling basins that we rely on to settle out those solids in the Mississippi River. Next slide, please. I mentioned the TO changes that we've made. Again, we're taking a look, trying to right-size our staff, make new positions where necessary. We've added a new position in our water project management. These are staff that we'll need if we are going to do our water master plan, have a comprehensive, capital improvement program, and start doing some of that renewal. We'll need those engineers, we'll need those supervisors, we'll need those utility locators to go out there and mark the water mains, to help assist in managing those projects and do reviews of the designs for those projects. We've also added, some technical positions in as well. We're adding in more data processing manager with one addition there. We are really driving towards tracking our metrics, developing good data sets that we can action, changes on to improve our division. Next slide, please. So the ARPA and bill funding have been, helpful. Certainly not the amount of money that we would hope for. Certainly not matching the need that we have. But we do have the $1 million for the customer assistance program that we're still working through. There is funding in that program. We encourage anyone who's having trouble with their water bills to contact us, check their eligibility, apply for that program, and get into a repayment plan, that can spread that cost of balance out over time so that they can pay that down and get back into good standing with us. We also had about $1.2 million for capital improvements out of the original allocation. And then we were very grateful to receive a very necessary emergency infusion from Board Bills 160 and 161, $1.2 million for water infrastructure repair and replacement projects with the interest, and $5.5 million for the same, that is going to be applied to projects that we have done, completed, to replace revenues that we lost due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, the state of Missouri receives these federal funds. We are applying aggressively for that. We increased our application to $65 million. That will be instrumental to get started into our capital improvement program that will, get improved actually, probably comprehensively with the Water Master Plan, but we know what we need to do to get started. We know where the critical needs are. This will be helpful to, again, get started there, but we do have to have water rates that can support that debt service. It is debt. We have to be lendable, so to speak. We have been using some of the ARPA funds through the state. We got that project completed for the lead service line inventory. We have another project that we're in the process of completing with our field inventory, where we've gone into approximately 1,400 homes, inspected those service lines to improve our inventory, and we'll be doing more visual inspection of that service line out in the tree lawn area with some hydro excavation activity that'll be kicking off very soon here. And I mentioned we are pursuing additional funds. So the assistance program, that ARPA-funded program, obviously, this does have a date at which this fund has to get drawn down. We intend to keep our temporary assistance program open as long as we can, as long as we have funding. We are continuing to receive applications as we've opened up eligibility, from a lower income threshold to a higher income threshold. We continue to try to make it easier to apply for and receive these funds, to help pay down a delinquent water balance and get into a repayment program where we are out there shutting several hundred accounts a week. We know that we need to have a solution to get people back on track with a repayment plan and back on track with a little bit of assistance up front. Next slide, please. This shows our delinquent balance. Over the course of the last several months, certainly when we have new bills that go out, the quarterly billing structure, a new amount of people become delinquent, and so you see a little bit of a spike up. But then as people start to pay their bills, you see that delinquent balance start to come down. And so, we did approach $14.5 million at the peak here, but we are on a downward trend here. We are starting to see some recovery of the balance that is owed. We're tracking this. We're tracking the repayment plan agreements that we have with our customers. And this is a combination of all of the types of delinquent balance, both residential and commercial and industrial. But overall, we are starting to see improvements there, 11% decrease peak in February of 26. Next slide, please. All right, so in our distribution section, again, this is the mains that are out in the system. To date, we have had over 200 repair activities for water mains. We're not even but a third through the year, and we're starting to see this level of issue out in the system. It is not predictable to a 100% degree. It is seasonal. The water main breaks, a huge portion of this was due to the winter storm that we had and the massive amount of water main breaks that we had following that. We do have over 5,700 distribution work orders to date. This is keeping our staff very busy. We're not relying right now on our emergency contractors because we are able to keep up with it internally. But as those seasonal events start to have the main breaks peak, we start to rely on those contractors, and it is expensive work. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the projects, I mentioned earlier we had to make some cuts to balance the budget. We only have $2.9 million allocated for approved budgeted projects. We had over $100 million worth of requests from all the departments, sections within our division. Putting a budget out there, we had to make a lot of cuts this year. And you can see quite a bit of the work, at the top of this list is emergency only. We like to do this stuff proactively. They are projects on our CIP. We just do not have the funds for them. A few of them we have supported. The Water Master Plan is very important because of the work it's doing to quantify and assess the condition of the assets that we own and are responsible for. So it is, in there, it did make the cut. And then we have a lot of unfunded critical capital needs. These are the highest level needs within the division. It's significant. It's over $200 million. Next slide, please. This kind of shows the impact of the winter storm. You can see that we had a higher number in, peaking towards the end of November, December. I don't think we have 2026 in here, but it's the seasonality of the water main breaks. We certainly see an increase in the winter, and we see an increase in the summer, depending on the conditions of the dryness in the summer, coupled with the heat, causes the ground to shift and the mains start to fail. In the winter, it is the extreme cold. The water temperature is also very cold because it's surface water, and that causes quite a bit of breaks with the ground temperatures as well. Next slide. I mentioned that we have our rate sufficiency study posted on our website. Encourage anyone who is interested in seeing the recommendations of that study, the methodology that was used, the level of deficiency that we've had historically in the last 5 years, and then looking forward in the next 5 years, the recommendations, by a consultant, in a financial model. This is data-backed approach to determining a recommendation for setting your water rates if they are not sufficient to your expenses. And so, we have revenue projections built in, relatively flat, due to the lack of growth of population or rate base in the city of St. Louis. And so it does recommend an increase, as a result of that study, to meet the operating capital and financial obligations that we have. Next slide, please. One of the things that we know we'll have to do, the amount of need is great. We have over $700 million worth of identified capital projects. We have a rate study that is recommending significant increases in water rates, double-digit percentage increases, in order to not just be reactive, but be proactive. And so, this is not the rate increases of the past that we're catching up, trying to catch up to the cost to operate the division. This is looking forward at the amount of infrastructure work that we need to start doing in order to minimize the emergency cost, in order to become more efficient with our treatment chemicals and our energy, in order to have less non-revenue water leaking out of our system, just going into the ground that we're paying for collectively as a rate base. And so we do know that we're going to have, potentially at-risk customers. We're raising the water rates. There are going to be people who are already struggling, who will continue to struggle more, even if we have some of the most affordable rates in the state now and continue to have, not the lowest, but not the highest rates in the state. Certainly not for a system of our size, our age. Looking at other municipal water systems in the state, we will still be very affordable, but not for those who are at risk. And so we're looking at working with the elected officials, to if we are going to pursue a rate increase, and we are going to pursue a rate increase, then it is going to help the people who are at risk with an affordability rate. We also still have the temporary assistance program, but this will act something more permanent to help those in need. So that concludes the presentation. Again, safe, reliable, economical drinking water for all of St. Louis. That's what we're here to do. That's our mission. It drives us every day to continue, to provide that service, that essential service. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Starting in order of seniority with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, Director. I really appreciate the detailed presentation. I also appreciate the availability of the Water Division recently to take a number of us on tours of the Chain of Rocks treatment plant. I believe it was my colleague, Alderman Devotee, who wrote in a recent social media post that it's like stepping back in time to the 1960s. And it is in many ways, both in the neat ways and in the not so neat ways, in that some of the things that some of that equipment is from the 1960s and is clearly towards the end of its life. I've heard over the many months that we've been meeting with the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, as well as multiple town halls all around the city, the vast need of the Water Division. And I have seen that things like the moratorium that was put in place, which wasn't the Water Division's fault, but you're doing the best you can under the circumstances. The rising costs aren't your fault, but you're doing the best you can to move money around and figure that out. The personnel costs and then the contracting costs on top of that, it's just thing after thing. And I think just what I've seen from your leadership, it's been excellent to pivot as much as you can, do what you can with what you have, which is the story of a lot of our city departments, but I think especially true of the Water Division. So my first question for you is, when was the last time your rates were sufficient to cover operation and capital improvement?
Yeah, there was some years when the contingent fund balance was growing, but when I started at the Water Division, I was hired in to do significant project work.
And what year was that?
2008. And just before a few rate increases that we got passed there, we had the contingent fund growing. But the order of magnitude of the projects that we were budgeting for, it was ambitious for the time. But again, you have to ramp into that. And so I don't think it would have been sufficient at that time either, with the increases that were passed then allowing us to continue to grow a contingent fund. We had staffing issues that were happening at the time as well. And so certainly before my time here, I don't think the rates have been sufficient because they've been some of the lowest in the state for a system that has some of the worst infrastructure in the state. And so that contrast, it just goes to show you that we need to think ahead. The level of increase that we just passed was another reactive one. And I think that the level of increase that we need in the rates to support a necessary rate that allows for us to do significant capital improvement, is going to be higher than the increase that we just saw.
And that makes sense since you're having a budget for replacement of equipment for really updating this really old system at this point. And the average age of our water infrastructure right now, just the average age of our pipes is something like, what is it right now? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know the age of all of it, but we certainly have a lot of pipe that is around 100 years old.
What's the average lifetime of a pipe?
Typically, you look at 50 to 100 years, but some of it is cast iron pipe, and it's installed in a way, and with the climate that we have and the surface water that we have, where you're probably tending to somewhere in the lower end of that scale.
So you were operating over 7 years at a deficit, and then the moratorium was added on top of that, which really put you in a pickle. I want to talk a little bit about that repayment program. So $1 million. You had over one point almost $14 million in unpaid rates that resulted in quite the lack of revenue. But only $1 million from ARPA was budgeted to help repay that amount. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's structured in a way that people actually have to go out and apply for it, and then it's a one-time $500 credit to their account. And how much of that money has been applied to this as of today?
It's somewhere just short of $300,000.
So missing 14 million in revenue, only given $1 million as an option, but only actually received around 300 or so thousand.
Yeah, the program remains funded. You know, we have significant funds left, and we're continuing to support that program and pushing people to apply for it. But correct, we haven't yet drawn that balance down in assistance that we have, and we still do have a significant of delinquent balance out there.
And if that money doesn't get expended, since that is American Rescue Plan Act money, it does have to be expended by the end of this year. If that doesn't get expended, do you have a plan to sweep that into revenue replacement like that?
Yeah, it would need to be reallocated, and again, we're working with the city councilor's office, with the mayor's office, you know, on the time frame of you know, when we would have to potentially reallocate that. And revenue replacement, you know, is the category, the expense category that all of our ARPA expenditures have on them, and so it would be able to be rolled into, you know, pay for our payroll or pay for our past projects that we've completed.
And then switching gears just slightly, you indicated that you've been reallocating money from personnel from vacant positions over to chemical costs. And that's because just we need to keep the water safe and clean for people. But does that compromise in any way your ability to respond to things like emergency repairs, which then you have to contract out for in order to repair?
This year, yes, it will. There is not enough money. You know, even if we freeze hiring and anticipate that we'll have some amount of remainder in our vacant position budget in our personnel services to pay for the treatment chemicals, to pay for the electrical, and to pay for the emergencies that we have. You know, those three historically have required a transfer from our contingent fund, and that's just not there right now. There's no balance there for us to transfer in from, and so we will be short with this budget, and that's why I said it's unsustainable.
And that's just an example of when you don't provide in one area, it starts to affect another area, which can cause cost overruns in one category. And it becomes this kind of cascading thing that then you run out of money in the contingency fund, and we're kind of all at a road to kick this can. So the rate sufficiency study has been done now, and it has turned out some results. What do you think gets you to a place where you're doing multiple repairs and replacements of critical equipment, being able to hire enough personnel to go out and address emergencies without having to contract out, which is more expensive, and to be able to afford supplies and equipment, really just the day-to-day operation in addition to capital improvement? What I know the rate increase, the rate sufficiency study put out some numbers. Does that by itself cover it?
It does. It covers anticipated future expenses based on cost indices rising. And so it factors in inflation, it factors in the rising cost of our personnel services, it factors in the rising cost of contract services. It also factors in a meaningful amount of capital renewal. You know, $440 million worth of bonded and cash financed and debt financed capital renewal. It also builds in a rate stabilization reserve fund to minimize the impact of future years worth of you know, increases, to maintain debt service coverage ratios and O&M reserve that is required to acquire this debt. And so, you know, the increases are significant, though. It's recommending a 40% increase initially, you know, front-loaded again to build the reserve back up, front-loaded to offset that mismatch that we have in expenses and revenues, and then in following years, a continuation of increases to support, you know, again, the O&M reserve that we will need, but the capital work that we will need. You know, as we start to issue debt packages to do the capital renewal with the water mains, with the you know, pumping units, with the treatment equipment, it factors all of that in. with 3 years of 6% increases, and then 2 more years of 5% increases. And so one of the only differences that it provides an approach instead of 40% upfront to break that into 2 smaller increases, just so that the ratepayers can absorb that, plan for that. So it does suggest 2 18% increases, which is what we're seeking support for, is the recommendations of that study.
And we've been recently moving money over to keep you all alive while we figure out the rates and any kind of other assistance. But looking at this ARPA or BIL funding, the most significant number there, and I've heard you say over and over again, over $700 million of needs. The most significant number in this is the 5.5 million that we recently moved over, and that was an ARPA reallocation when other places, when other programs that we had funded failed to spend funds down. So we've kind of moved the leftovers over to the Water Division to keep them alive, but this rate increase is absolutely critical to not just making sure you continue to operate, but making sure that you can get on the path to financial solvency.
Yeah, the ARPA, reallocations were certainly a lifeline for us. We still project a deficit through the end of this fiscal year without an additional help. But one of the things that we continue to do is take a look at our expenses, determine which of our projects, again, we can defer. We are not trying to run out of money. We're trying to make it through operating to provide the service, that we need to provide. We have a hierarchy of kind of, critical needs. Safety of the water, safety of our employees is at the top of that list. Reliability, comes next, and then we certainly strive to be affordable. But we've deferred these projects in the past, and we'll continue to defer projects as necessary, as able to make ends meet, to not run out of funds, to continue operating so that we pay our staff, keep water safe and reliable out of the tap. But again, we may have service-related issues with leaks that run that we will not be able to support addressing. Emergency water main breaks that are affecting service will have priority.
You said you deferred a lot of projects in order to keep above water here. Excuse me, not meaning to make a pun there, but you deferred projects and deferred maintenance. I've always kind of I'm more on the side of buildings. I always refer to it as deferred maintenance is always a fancy word for neglect. Not to say that you've neglected the water infrastructure, you just haven't had the money to keep up. But what results when we defer a project is then we have a project that should have happened but didn't, and something else had to take priority. We're used to that in the city. We have to prioritize all sorts of things all the time. That bridge may be failing, but that bridge might be actively falling apart. So we have to fix that one before we can fix this one, that kind of thing. But I'm looking at the main breaks here, and I'm looking at the numbers. We're not quite finished with FY26 yet, but it's looking high. Do you think we're gonna set a new record for breaks?
It's tough to say, but we've been trending up, and so I'd say it's not unreasonable to expect that if we have a bad winter, we'll have more breaks this year. I know you're talking fiscal year, so I do think that it depends largely on the weather the rest of the year here, and to some extent just if we have a run of them or get lucky. But no, I do think that over the years we've been experiencing more and more. So yeah, we're continuing to have a lot of pressure due to the water main breaks.
And something really key there you said, I think, is the weather affects this.
Yes.
So the more extreme weather we have, the more breaks and problems with the system.
Yeah, the year over year we've seen quite a bit more storms. The winter storms certainly have a big impact. This last one was one of the highest peaks that we've had, and water main breaks, certainly in a short amount of time as well. It really put a strain on our internal staff, plus a multitude of emergency contractors to be able to address these. And this happens regionally as well. I mean, there were certainly a lot of main breaks in the county, but with our aging infrastructure, with our lack of water main replacements, where we have a lot of breaks due to the age and conditions of that water main, we certainly have a lot more than the national average, than maybe what some of the neighboring water utilities have. We think we're a little over double.
So the increased rates will help you hopefully reduce the number of breaks. But I think of the increased rates as like maybe you or your spouse got a new job and they're starting in 2 weeks. And so maybe they're going to make some more money at that new job, but you still have things breaking around your house right now that you need to get to. And so that future salary is great. And maybe you'll be able to take out some additional debt when that salary kicks in. But until then, you're not really able to do those projects that might be critical. I know we're discussing sending some money to the water division from the RAM settlement funds. What would that money be helpful with? I thought I heard you say $65 million just to get started, but maybe I misheard. Can you share
Yeah, so right now, the application we have into the state for a state revolving fund loan, which may have some grant component to it, is $65 million. That is $20 million for water mains. It supports, the project to rehabilitate our intake structure at the Chain of Rocks plant. It supports a project to put in 2 new pumping units at our Howard Bend plant, and then some other smaller improvements that are necessary as well. One of our chemical systems, our lime system, certainly can use a refresh. A new facility to, store, process, and deliver lime to our treatment process is not a cheap project, probably in the order of $10 to $15 million. We have that in there as well. And so, you're right that we don't have that right now because we don't have a reserve fund. We don't have sufficient operating and maintenance reserves. Certainly don't have a capital fund. And so what the RAMS piece can do for us, if there's RAMS funding that comes to the water division, is provide immediate cash in an infrastructure fund that can be leveraged to go after those loans and have a stable amount of reserve in our system to continue operating as we're talking about. We won't be able to make it through this next fiscal year with the budget we presented. And so, it'll support potentially emergency repairs, but what we'd like to see it do is support debt service for, loans that are subsidized. And so it really can kind of extend and leverage, in multiple layers, the amount of capital funding and renewal that we can do. That is our goal, is to leverage any new funds that come in, especially in the form of RAMS dollars, to get projects done.
Because those RAMS dollars are interest-free, whereas other loans have varying degrees of interest. And so not to mention, if you sit the RAMS funds, you can make interest off of them as well and, use that to spend. So I think when we talk about the RAMS money, what's special about it is that it's got no strings, it's got no requirements. Unlike federal money, which comes with lots of little conditions, or state money, which is controlled by the state, we can use this for whatever we need to, and in addition, it just comes without an interest rate. I think that's. I know that I could ask you questions all day, and I don't want to take up more time from my colleagues, but I'll just end by saying, whenever something breaks in the city, we see Water Division employees out immediately addressing it. It can sometimes take time, sometimes several days to address it, but there's no doubt that there's employees on the scene doing that work. And every time I talk to a constituent, when there is an issue with water, it's not, there was a break and it went unaddressed. It's, there was a break and the city was out here immediately, trying to fix it and working through the night if necessary, or doing whatever it took. And I've heard nothing but good things, good compliments from constituents when it comes to Water Division employees, and just how dutiful they are, and how really the public servant aspect. The other thing that I enjoyed about going on a tour of the plant was getting to talk to the people at the division, because I think when you talk to them, you understand that their heart is really in this. They really take pride in delivering safe, clean water and having one of the best water systems in the country, if we take care of it. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you for everything you're doing to try to get the water division back on track.
Thank you for the questions. Yeah, they are, extremely dedicated. They care a lot, and I can see the frustration. I mean, I myself was frustrated there with, the lack of funding, the lack of rates to do the meaningful work that'll keep them making progress rather than being reactive and keeping things going for far beyond what they should be. Thank you.
Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Director.
Hello.
I appreciate all of your work. I didn't get a chance to make the very cool tour, but I hopefully do plan to, and I've enjoyed all the pictures, and I've even had some residents ask me if they can get a tour. And I'm like, I haven't went yet, but we'll see what we can do about that. But I think it is just cool in real time for folks to kind of see some of the inner workings that are behind the scenes. And I would say, I feel like water needing investment being one of the city's, really primarily left like public goods that still remain, I think is something that is a top priority and should be a top consideration of any city leader, in my opinion, at this time. And so I think your presentation just helps to highlight some of the very obvious, common sense, clear reasons of why you certainly are in need of some funds. My questions are really just about some like very specific things within your budget, and then I'll like come out and be a bit more general.
Sure.
Just in terms of the rental and non-capital leases, I just had a specific question about the facility and grounds rental and leases. There's a couple of different amounts each year. So is this for where the chain is and like who's over that contract, or just any details about that? Because I see it kind of increases and decreases pretty sharply each year.
Sure. So that's tied to a lot of the emergency repair work we do, but also just kind of regular maintenance work at both the plants and the distribution system. And so what happens is, we certainly have some construction equipment that we own, that we procured, through a capital budget in the years past, but we've been pursuing some leases of some of this equipment moving forward here. And then the rentals as well, these are things that we'll have to rent to support the main repair activity. These are things that we may have to rent at the treatment plants that we don't have that's functioning by way of cranes or equipment. And so year over year, we have seen an increased cost for that. And so it did go up slightly this year.
And I guess that kind of gets to what Alderman Browning's question asks about just the increases in emergency incident.
Yeah, we continue to see a lot of water main breaks, the most we've had in many years last year. I don't like to project that we're going to break that, but it's possible, right? And so that comes with a lot of costs. Obviously, the contractual services, but the rental equipment and leases.
Understood. And then taxes and licenses. Could you just speak to what some of your taxes and licenses are that you have to maintain? I see for FY27 that amount is for $7,915,690.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to call Perla Burke up to maybe speak to some of that. Taxes and licenses.
It was for FY26, it was $8 million. FY25 is about $4 million. FY24 is about $3 million, and this year it's a little bit under $8 million.
Before you begin, could you introduce yourself and your position?
The line for taxes and licenses.
It's on page 208 in our budget book.
Okay, I don't think I have the whole book here. We can also get you an answer to that afterwards. Right there.
So the taxes and
Could you
license.
state your first and last name, ma'am?
Ms. Bird,
The different.
Could you
sorry.
state?
have to say your name, your full name, and your position, please.
Yeah. So the difference is the. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Perla Burke, a fiscal manager for the city of St. Louis. So the difference is that in fiscal year 2026, we originally have a higher budget that for a revenue estimate, and we restated it. We did a revision, but this was not adjusted. So it was like $86 million, and now it got reduced to 75 million. So the 8 million taxes was based upon the original revenue estimate, whereas this one here, the 2027, is based on a lesser revenue estimate for fiscal year 2027. So that's the difference.
Okay. And like, my last question is just around water maintenance technicians. Obviously, they're high in need right now. We just got done speaking of all of the water breaks, and I know you and I have had several conversations, and I can imagine it's like that with you and Alder, given all of the issues across the city. But I just noticed specifically for FY26, it looked like you were budgeted for 79 positions. You filled 68. For FY27, you requested 79 positions, but there are 18 being proposed. So that gives you a plan to hopefully be able to add about 14. And my question to you is just kind of about your confidence in filling these positions. I've been, as we go through this budget process, also looking at our pay study, and I see that the pay study that the city did kind of indicates that the low minimum is about 49,000, the medium is about 55,000. The top is 62,000, and the city, it looks like we allow for a range between 46 to 56. So there's about a 13% difference in terms of the lowest starting salary. And I just was curious about your confidence in getting those positions filled, since it looks like they have been granted, but also seeing just a little bit of disparity between kind of the pay in the industry and what we're doing.
Sure. No, that's a great question. It is our position that we have the most of in RTO. It really drives a lot of the work that you see happening both out in the streets with the emergency repairs, but also at the treatment plants with operating those plants, cleaning those basins, maintaining the grounds and the facilities that we have there. It was not addressed in this pay plan. There is no adjustment to the pay for water maintenance technicians. We continue to work with the Department of Personnel on specific positions in the water division, that have water in the title typically. In the pay ordinance, we think there's a continuation of work that needs to be done, maybe a kind of a mini study, if you will, for our positions. We have had high turnover in that position. We've had difficulty hiring that position and
Are
keeping
you saying
them.
a mini study because do you feel like the numbers I just said from the pay study are actually not accurate with the industry?
So the pay study obviously looked at other municipalities in the region, but we are kind of a unique subset. We are a water utility that is a municipal division, right? And so when you have that, the number of people that you're looking at shrinks. So yes, I do think that we need to make some more progress with our water-specific positions and continue to do that. The study overall, looked at all of the city departments and classifications, but I do see some gap there in pay that's needed to hire those in.
What do you think? What's the gap?
Well, without the study, it's hard to say, but I can tell you this. We have a contract to provide staff for us in difficult-to-fill positions. This is a recruiting staffing company, effectively. We have been utilizing that most heavily for this position. Obviously, we do have 79 positions on our TO. We have a number of them unfilled. We have difficulty hiring in qualified people with the pay, and so we are contracting a lot of people in for that position They're not exactly temporary workers. They come in, they work for this contract company, but they work alongside our crews. They get paid differently. They get paid by another company, and so that is a problem, a gap that I do think
They get paid a higher rate?
they get paid a market rate to hire them in, and so they're recruited and paid.
Market rate?
It varies based on experience, right? So, we have certainly an interview process that occurs, and we know what the market rate may be for.
Okay, let me ask you a
particular-
different question.
Sure.
Okay, so I know the reality we live in, right? We live
Yeah.
in a world of just everything public is usually very underfunded. I know all locals of government are having some unprecedented cuts right now. But let's just strip that away.
Sure.
And if you had a magic wand and you got to set a magic starting salary for your water maintenance technicians, what does that range to you?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can tell you it's
Do you have a
higher than
minimum?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's higher than we are now, though, because again, we're having challenges there. And, one of the benefits of civil service too, this contract does bring, qualified, experienced people to come work for us in that role. But, after 5 or 6 months, they can apply to become a civil servant, which makes it very interesting because, they're getting paid what they're getting paid by that contract vendor, but also they're not getting the benefits that come with it, the pension, the other benefits that the city offers. And so there's a little bit of a trade-off there, but I know we could have very long conversations about the benefit of a pension versus, an hourly wage, which way.
What you're mentioning with the folks who you bring in outside of your company, is that in the professional services? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then this is just my very last, very general question. Obviously, we're talking about RAM settlement dollars going to the water division. I just thought it would be a good record to a good idea to put on record what's kind of along your lines with your question with Brown and some of the things that that fund would go to. Something that I have an interesting time explaining to constituents is that you guys are an enterprise fund, not a general fund, and so that makes how you work a little bit different, and like trying to explain to residents like what that actually means, and also in terms of your ability to unique ability to potential leverage other bonds and take out other funds and pursue other grants, but that it's also very reliant upon the city's financial standing and our credit rating, and specifically as an entity for you all as an enterprise fund. It's got a lot of relationship with your, debt to service bond ratio. Obviously, some of these things kind of get above the frail of kind of what, a lot of folks in the public on an everyday basis can tango, but I think it would be helpful if you could explain what the RAM settlement funds might be interested in. And also, when you talked about your water utility assistance help program, you mentioned the sort of like kind of hinted at the requirements for assistance. If you could also say what that is.
Sure. So to start, the RAMS fund, certainly can help with the reserve issue. Anytime you're going after debt, and the type of debt that we typically go after as an enterprise is a little different because we have revenues that support our operations, our expenses, including our debt service. And so when you have revenue bonds going after, there are still requirements, by that lender to know that you're creditworthy. And some of those requirements are a debt coverage rate. They want to make sure that your net revenue is able to cover that annual debt service plus an amount of padding. And so the rate sufficiency study we did looks at 1.5 as a debt service coverage ratio. When we are looking at 7 years of deficits, net revenues doesn't exactly line up there, right? And so we can't borrow money if we can't promise that we can pay it back with our revenues and our water rates. So, that's one of the nuances, but you're right, it is tied to the city's creditworthiness too. And so when it goes through underwriting, when you're trying to acquire that debt financing, they will take a look at your credit rating as well as a city, but also because we're enterprise, they'll look at the revenue piece because it's a different type of bond that we go after. And so ultimately what that RAMS fund does is it helps alleviate some of the concerns for the creditor in what's called O&M reserve. And so we have to also have 90 days of cash on hand for operating and maintenance, that shows that, again, we're good at saving money and have that for a rainy day if and when needed. That is something that is not in place right now. So as lendability goes, we would need to make sure we have rates that cover the debt service plus a factor, and also cash reserves that show that we can handle some kind of gap in an expense that comes up, an emergency expense. One of the things the sufficiency study also does is it goes beyond that to look at best practice to have a rate stabilization reserve, so that not only can we meet a gap in expense, but we could even meet a gap in revenue. If for some reason we have a down year in revenue, wholesale water is a great example of that. We certainly try to project and budget what we're going to get for wholesale water revenue, but any of those systems that draw water from us and purchase water from us are also doing their own level of capital renewal. Treatment facilities they're building out. We know that many of these contracts, they're growing in their cities, and they're working to maybe get a treatment facility that can handle their own needs. So that is a risk in revenue down the road. That rate stabilization reserve fund will address that to say that, hey, we can handle this down year without having an emergency rate increase that's necessary. And actually, for the assistance program, I am going to call my special assistant water commissioner up here to talk to you about the eligibility requirements for that program. He can certainly answer some questions. He's been helping tremendously in that space.
Sure. Do you have a specific question about it? I apologize. I step out for a sec. My name is Spencer Gould. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Water. Hi there, Ms. Sonia.
Hi, Mr. Good. It's nice to see you in person. You're very responsive via email, and I appreciate that. I was just curious about the eligibility requirements for the assistance program, specifically in terms of income and those types of considerations.
For the current assistance program, it currently is 60 or it's 80% of median household income. It requires getting into a repayment contract with us to cover the rest of that debt. You have to be a city resident. You have to be, let me go through it off the top of my head here. I think, yeah, that's the big high level swing. Thank you. You're welcome.
That's all my questions, Chairman.
And I think you guys got a flyer on that program. Just want to bump it to the budget committee. I know that was in partnership with the collector revenue, so the information out there if you want to send that on out.
Our website has the link to the application portal. We have paper applications at the Water Division at 1640 South Kings Highway Boulevard. And also, as Spencer mentioned, we have those requirements for eligibility, but we're seeking to expand usership too. Delinquent balance is also another component to that, and so you have to have a past due balance on your water account, and it's up to $500 per account. So if you have a residential water account and you had a $300 balance that you applied for in the past, you still have $200 that you can apply for if you fell behind again and have that delinquent balance.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Great. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Patel and Mr. Gould for being here. I think my colleagues have asked some great questions, so I don't have too much to add on, but I did want you to talk about, because I think one of the misconceptions for a lot of folks, for consumers, is, the Water Division is, and this is a high level thing, but the Water Division is, of course, part of the City of St. Louis, and therefore, whatever rate increases and other things that public utilities are typically regulated, we are not part of that process since it's a part of the city. We're not regulated by the PSC. And we know that there's a need for water rate increases, but can you just talk about what the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year outlook is for, our capital needs and also potential water rate increases, and how other utilities might do it since we are not regulated by the PSC?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So obviously, we are a public utility. We're a municipally owned utility, and that's the difference there. Private utilities, they're also known as monopoly utilities, have a different rate-making process. They have a different regulatory. Obviously, we are to some extent regulated by elected officials and the Board of Aldermen, and we operate under the mayor's office. But a utility like Ameren or Missouri American, Spire, they have to take their information, their operating plans, their rate increase requests to the Public Service Commission. They have to go through a very regulated rate-making case, and they have teams of people, within those utilities that support those rate cases. And it's not very different from what we're striving to do here. We certainly have hosted a few town halls. Those are available on our website. They were live streamed. People could ask questions. You can go to our website and submit a question now. But it is a little different because we are a municipal utility, not a private one that is for-profit. And so the for-profit piece is another aspect of it, to that private utility, that monopoly utility, that we don't have a profit or investors to pay back.
Alderwoman, you on mute?
Thank you. Yep. And then can you just talk about, you mentioned that, of course, the 2023 rate increase was reactive and sort of and was an emergency rate increase that we're looking at. Rate increases, again, just to start to be sustainable. But can you talk about what that looks like 3, 5, and 10 years out? Or if you have 2, 5, and 10 years out, I don't know how
Sure.
you're.
So the way our, and I'm going to start with the rate sufficiency study because this is what we're basing off of. Again, it's a study that took a look at 5 years of historical revenues and expenses. It identified if there was a need for an increased rate, if there was a gap there, and then it built a financial model based on that and 5 years of projected future revenues and expenses. And the future expenses did require a CIP, a capital improvement program, that dictates when that maybe debt issuance or cash financing, bonds, are going to be released on what schedule to provide for what amount of project work in coming years. And so looking at that CIP that we gave the consultant, the amount of work that we know we need to do, and putting together a schedule of that work, our internal capital improvement program effectively, it is looking at a gap, a deficiency in existing rates to cover the cost of existing expenses. And so it had to address that. I'll call that bucket one. Stabilization, solvency of the current operation. Secondly, it was looking at things like an O&M reserve that was non-existent and needs to be built back up. It's looking at a rate stabilization reserve that's non-existent and needs to be built back up, and then the future project work that I mentioned. So what it's looking at is saying that we'll need a 40% increase initially, and then 3 6% increases each year following, and then 2 5% increases each year following that. It has about a 5-year period. And what that looks like, though, is doing $440 million worth of revenue bond, cash, other financing means, including maybe a component from the RAM settlement funds to help, minimize that impact. But, $440 million worth of projects is not going to be supported by the RAMs. These are bonds so that we can spread that cost out over time, and it can be, absorbed, paid for over time rather than all at once. But it is looking at bringing in an additional $60 million into our budget to satisfy those 3 buckets that I mentioned. And ongoing, that'll look like the ability to continue to do what we need to do to operate. But the difference there is that we will now be able to replace, 110, miles of water mains and replace pumping units that are well past their life and put in new treatment facilities that'll minimize our chemical expenses. And so really what that CIP is going to end up doing is, reinvesting back into the water system, into assets that are past their useful service life and are expensive to continue to maintain and get those savings, going down the road to ensure that we're sustainable for the next generation of St. Louis.
Thank you, that's helpful. Just a couple more quick questions. As far as you know, what for utilities regulated by the PSC, for instance, is there a minimum percentage or amount that they're required to keep in reserves?
The industry standards, sometimes talk about 90 days of O&M reserves. Some more aggressive standards can go to 6 months, 180 days. With where we are now, the rate sufficiency study projects initially with that 40% increase, trying to get to 45 days of O&M reserve. And then, the next iteration gets us to 90 days. And all of that also annually takes a look to make sure that our debt service coverage ratio never drops below, what any revenue bond is going to ask for, which is a coverage ratio of 1.25 to 1.5. And so certainly early on, as we get that initial amount of money and start building a reserve fund, it'll look like a very high coverage ratio. But towards the back end, once we've started doing those, debt issuances, it drops back down to, to cover the 150% threshold that we need to cover. But it shows that all of the increases that it's recommending are necessary to do that level of capital work that is in the CIP. And so, we're not going to ask for more than we need, but we do need to ask for enough that we can get started on all of that and maintain those indentures of trust with those lenders that are lending money to us for the work.
I appreciate your time and your questions and your level of preparedness, and I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Devotie.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. I'll be very quick because I know we're about 35 minutes over right now. I think in 25 plus years of practice, I've learned that the most dangerous question in the world always starts with, I have one more question to ask. Real quick, throughout your presentation, you have used a term of art, TO. For those folks who are watching, will you explain what a TO is?
Sure. So that is our table of organization. It is the roster of staff, civil servants that we employ at the Water Division. And, when we refer to the vacancy rate, it's the amount of positions that we have unfilled. And so over the years, as budget cycle goes through, we ask for more or less to right-size the division. And, we are in a period of growth. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We know we need to be ready for that with our staffing.
There has been a lot of discussion about the rate sufficiency study. Again, for those folks at home, my memory is that you and Mr. Gould are appearing before the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee on Wednesday afternoon at 3:30 in this room, are you not?
Yes, that's correct.
And the focus of that particular hearing will be an in-depth discussion of the sufficiency study and how it affects the operation of the water department moving forward. Is that fair?
Yes, it is.
I have one, and I think this should be a brief response. I have gotten a number of questions from constituents about if rate increase goes through, where do those funds go? In other words, do they go to the city's general revenue, or are they kept in the water division? They are kept in the water division, are they not?
Correct. They'll support our operations and our capital work that we need to do going forward.
Okay. The other comment I want to make, and you made I think a good presentation, which I very much appreciate with respect to the collection on delinquent accounts. Thank you. That's been in my craw for a long time. I appreciate the work of the division. And then finally, you made comment about various, from a budgetary perspective, various reductions that would need to be made, one of which are long-term, not long-term, but essentially proactive work. And I think if I picked up on any theme today, it's the idea that this division is moving from what for many, many, many years, the active response to emergencies, to the want to turn the corner and actually start to plan and execute improvements on a proactive basis, correct?
Yes, that's the plan.
And looking back as far as mid-January, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm trying to get done here. Looking back to a discussion you and I had in mid-January, when we talk about the need to move from being reactive to proactive, that starts on a very basic level of dealing with projects that require to the tune of $16.4 million to replace 2 pumps and additional work to the tune of about $28 million to deal with 63 of the worst mains. Is that right?
Yes.
In my memory from our discussion in mid-January is when we talk about the worst, that we're talking about mains that are over 100 years old, that nobody should be surprised when they break, correct?
Yes.
And again, just to wrap this up, when we talk about what it cost us, taxpayers, every time one of those things breaks and your crew is out there on an emergency basis, that runs about $13,000, right?
That's actually just the contract portion. Internally, we have a lot more work that supports all of that, so probably over 20,000. They're all said and done.
Wow, well, you just helped make my point. Okay, so all the more reason to deal with this on a proactive basis, right?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Director. A lot of my questions are around the water main rate efficiency study and stuff. So since that conversation will be had Wednesday and time, I'll make sure we save that space or save my questions for that space where we'll be going over that. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Aldridge.
No problem. All right, next we will have Collector of Revenue, Mr. Greg Daly, if you want to come on up and present your budget and mention any staff that you may have with you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget and Public Employees Committee. My name is Greg Daly. I'm the Collector of Revenue for the City of St. Louis. With me this morning, I have our Chief of Staff, Mark Stoff, and also with us is the Assistant Collector for Refuse and Water, Rachel McClure. She's in the back there. So if I could I just make a presentation, or is this the way it starts?
Yeah, however you want to make it.
All right. The Office of the Collector of Revenue is a fee-based county office. For reference, we run on a fiscal year beginning with the first Monday in March as prescribed by state statute, while the city's fiscal year begins on July the 1st and ends on June the 30th. Collector of Revenue is responsible for collecting real estate taxes, personal property taxes, earning and payroll expense taxes, water fees, and refuse fees. Collections made by the Collector of Revenue are distributed throughout the city to support various public services, facilities, agencies, and funds. The earnings tax is the biggest funding source for general revenue, comprising over 1/3 of total dollars. During the fiscal year ending March 1st, 2026, total collections were $978 million, real estate and personal property, $545 million, earnings and payroll expenses, $341 million, water, $72 million, trash, $16 million. City disbursements breakdown: real estate and personal property, $525 million to designated agencies such as public schools, zoo museum district, MSD, sheltered workshop districts, plus payments to TIFs and SBDs, etc. Earnings and payroll expenses, $317 million to general revenue, water, $67 million to the water division, trash, $16 million to the refuse division. As directed by state and local laws, the collector of revenue is funded by commissions on the fees and taxes the office collects, which ranges between 1.5% and 4%. In June, any excess commissions after operating expenses are distributed to the appropriate agencies associated with the tax or fees from which those commissions were derived. Excess commissions this year will be around $19.2 million, and since 2007, my first year as collector of revenue, total excess commissions distributed exceeded $214 million. Collector of revenue currently employs right at 86 full-time and 4 permanent per-performance employees located on 3 floors of City Hall. We are hoping to bring on board an additional 3 or 4 additional employees in the next couple weeks. Like most city employees, salaries and benefits make up the largest expense of the collector of revenue at right around 65% of total expenses. Minimum salary, starting salaries for the collector of revenue is $41,600, and that should rise to about $42,848 with the implementation of our new pay bill. All employees receive paid parking provided by the office or of a consumer salary adjustment. We're always looking to supplement our benefit package, not only to recruit talent, but to retain it. We pay an assessment to the comptroller's office for the spaces that we occupy, the support we receive from ITSA, and any other associated cost. This year assessment will be $685,000. We assist other departments, including the assessor's office, license collector, health department, and Operation Brightside by offering our personnel and equipment for large mailings, informational inserts, and other projects at no cost. The collector of revenue has received ARPA funds from this administration to allocate on behalf of RETAF for eligible and improved homeowners who are behind in their real estate taxes and in danger of having their home sold, as well as a water utility assistance program for those with outstanding water bills. ARPA funds are not commingled with other funds, and any interest earned stays with those funds and their designated programs. The Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund, RETAF, is a partnership that includes Park Central Development, Prosperity Connection, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, the Collector of Revenue, and the City of St. Louis, and has saved some 210 owner-occupied homes from tax sales, directly impacting 360 residents, preserving $7 million in home equity. There have been some preliminary discussions with aldermen and other elected officials about the Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund becoming a permanent program with a designated funding source with the collector of revenue, which we would love to continue in those conversations. As we all know, family homes are the cornerstone of generational wealth, and we have all seen the devastating effects vacant properties can have on our neighborhoods. For the Water Utility Assistance Program, we have partnered with the Water Department and United Way to provide up to $500 towards delinquent accounts for residents. Additionally, the Collector of Revenue provides several repayment plans, options designated to ensure that residents emerge with a zero balance and a fresh start upon successful completion. These are some of the items that are involved in the Collector of Revenue's budget. And Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd be more than happy to discuss other facets of the Collector of Revenue or answer any questions in general.
Thank you, Mr. Collector. Starting with Alderwoman Tanya.
Good morning, Mr. Collector.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Thank
You're
you.
actually the only department I don't really have any questions for. Your budget is pretty straightforward and to the point. Your office is very efficient and collaborative. I've enjoyed all of our conversations, legislation we've done together. I'm really happy, I always voice my appreciation for the RETAF program and other things that go in your office. I don't have any questions. I just appreciate your service to our city.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of the Collector of Revenue, we very, very much appreciate those comments, and I'll share them with our staff.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you. Thank you, Collector Revenue. I don't have any other questions for you. We saved all our questions for water, apparently. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. And no questions myself. Echo what Alderwoman Sonia said. Thank you for, one of the things I always appreciate about the office is how you guys are turning a lot of stuff to digital so people don't have to come to City Hall and cut through all the red tape to try to, get their business done. I think if people want to pay their property tax or personal property tax or whatever other tax there is, real estate tax, is it Pay Forward they can go to be able to pay it online? Is it Pay It St. Louis?
The tool that we use is called Pay It St. Louis, and we have had that in effect for 7 years? 10 years, I'm sorry, which has really, really helped as far as collections go, but most importantly, it makes it so much easier for the people to pay their bills. We all get lost every once in a while. Pay It is something as a reminder, a constant reminder, giving the taxpayer a constant update on what they owe or what we expect as the Collector of Revenue. So it works out extremely well. Trying very hard to implement Pay It St. Louis in other departments throughout the city. We have brought a couple of departments to the table: license collector's office, building division, corner across the street. So it is something that we have implemented with Pay It St. Louis, and again, we are working extremely hard to try to bring this to all city agencies. I think it makes sense.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you to you and your staff for all the great work that you guys do.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thanks so much. And to the members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Moving along, trying to catch us up a little bit, we have the Sheriff Department here. So if the interim sheriff would like to come on up and present this year's budget, mention any members you have with you, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Aldridge. This is to the Budget and Public Employees Committee. My name is John Hayden. I'm the interim sheriff for the city of St. Louis. I've brought with me my chief of staff, Mr. Jack Giesecke, and I brought my colonel, the undersheriff, is the technical term, undersheriff, Colonel Yosef Yasharala, with me to assist me in case there are additional questions. Certainly, I want to thank the Budget and Public Employees Committee for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2027 budget submission. The Sheriff's Office remains committed to fiscal responsibility and the ongoing work of rebuilding public trust in the agency, and the budget before this committee reflects that commitment. directing resources where operational need is clear and documented, and ensuring full transparency in the stewardship of public funds. The personal services, and I'm going to different categories, personal services subtotal is expected to increase upon the passage of the fiscal year 2027 pay bill, which would raise the statutory minimum salary for the St. Louis deputy sheriffs to $50,000 in accordance with state statute. The sheriff office is respectfully requesting one additional full-time equivalent for the cashier's office. That comes from a recent statutory change, transferred the fee collection responsibilities from the circuit clerk's office to the sheriff's office. The circuit clerk's office had previously staffed 2 employees to perform these functions. The sheriff's office has absorbed these additional duties with a single employee, creating an operational imbalance that must be addressed to ensure accuracy, accountability, and continuity of public service. The most significant increase reflected in the 2027 preliminary estimates appear in account 55700 total capital leases. Basically, what occurred is in August of 2025, the sheriff's office entered into a contract with Axon for the procurement of new tasers. What that was for, though, that was the total amount was I think it was close to $500,000. And what they were wanting to do is come right out and get that full amount right away. What we were able to talk to, my chief of staff was able to contact the agency, and what we're able to do is break that down over a 5-year period. The commitment initially was, payment upon demand, but we were able to talk with them, and so now the fiscal year 27, the first installment would be $107,150. And so I think it was very good for him to be able to do that because, again, what was committed to was a $500,000 commitment right up front. The sheriff's office, I'm sorry, what was the thing? Talked about the tasers. We added an IT, on professional services, there's an IT response availability right now. The services of our electronic situation, all of our internet and what have you, all of our electronic responses has been committed by Regis. However, there's kind of they're only able to provide somebody basically once a week to come by, and what that would do is that would prevent things on a daily basis that for example, onboarding somebody back on, computer goes down or what have you. We need to be able to contact somebody more often, and we've asked for $10,000 for that, so that we can, upon services as requested or as needed, we can call somebody to come and onboard additional computers or what have you, somebody just starting. So that's just something that we've added this year. But other than that, for the most part, this is a very conservative budget compared to this time last year. That's pretty much what I wanted to share. Certainly, I'm open to any questions you may have about this budget or the Sheriff's Department's functions.
Gotcha. Alderwoman Tanya.
Hello, Mr. Hayden, Sheriff Hayden, nice to see you. I only have one question that is just very straightforward about y'all's budget. For capital assets, for capital leases, in FY24 through FY26, they were all around $160,000. But for FY27, it looks like you're requesting $307,500, but was only granted $160,000, which is the same amount as the previous years. So my question is just about this line item in general. What's it for, and what is the increase in requests due to?
Yes, ma'am. So I mentioned the taser, the contract. So what happened before I got there in August? I didn't arrive. My first day on the job was November the 3rd. But back in August of 2025, the previous Sheriff Montgomery had contracted with Axon tasers for that. We use the tasers for not every single deputy has a taser, but the outside services in particular, they do use I'm sorry, I'm confusing two different things. the TASER contract is for all of the, a TASER has an expiration date on it. So the TASER situation is for all deputies. Okay, and so what Montgomery had signed up for was that payment to be $500,000 in total, but to be paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. What the chief of staff has done is got them to agree to modify that to allow us to pay $107 over 5 years, and so that's an increase of approximately $107,000. Was it 107? Yeah, $107,000 year by year. So that would account for that increase as Axon tasers.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Is she online, Madam Clerk? No. All right. It looks like the budget is straightforward from the previous year. It looks like you say, outside of maybe equipment, which has a little bit of increase, makes sense. Still looks like you guys are trying to hire senior deputies. Applied for 139, only occupied 121. How many, I guess, deputies are you all down currently at the moment?
Yeah, we're short, Alderman. We're short 31 deputies at the current.
Okay. And is it short 2 sergeants also, sergeants?
Yes, that would include the sergeants as well.
And about 4 short on captains?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. What, how has the relationship, and can you give us an update on the relationship between the CJC and the transfer of residents in the CJC? How has that situation gone, and has that been an impact on the budget? I know that was something the previous sheriff and the previous administration had brought up. Could you give an update on that?
Yes, sir. So one thing that we've done is that we utilize overtime, so we moved some monies from our general salaries fund and put it in an overtime budget to assist us with the hospital detail. We start off with 18 or so deputies on the detail, and our ability to be able to call other deputies in, when they call them in from off duty to come and assist us. So that was a $100,000 shift. We've actually this budget, and that was from the current budget. So we just shifted from one category to another and created an overtime budget. What we've done this time, though, is that we've asked for $50,000 ahead of time, kind of anticipating the ongoing need for being able to call people from home, which is I think is something that's certainly worthwhile. It makes it kind of adds a little salve to a kind of a pretty demanding situation. The relationship, Alderman, as you asked, is going well. I think you could. Commissioner Hayward would agree with that it's going well, in that we're providing 1-for-1 for each hospital detail. That does not include anybody that the police department. So in other words, in order for us to be 1-for-1, a person has to be already after the 24 warrants have to be issued. So there are occasions, though, when we're providing a full service for the police department before warrants are issued. And so an example might be somebody that was injured during the intake of police officers. We're going to handle that detail on our own until warrants issued. And if that person is critically injured in some kind of way, we're going to continue to have that until they're actually brought to the Office of Corrections, until they're actually brought to CJC. So some of those details are ongoing. We have 3 or so that we're providing all of the detail for in time. So at those situations, we're not able to do 1-for-1. The sheriff's department has to supply all of that until warrants are issued. But I would tell you that it's going well. I think that Commissioner Hayward would agree with that. We're managing. I mean, there are times when it's really tough, but we're managing that. We are willing to go down to the wire. Colonel Yusuf Yasharala has actually been there himself. I've been on the way, and so we're doing whatever we can to manage that. I would ask for an opportunity to come before the Board of Aldermen at some point with some different options. I know that so at one point, South City Hospital had a ward that would cut down significantly the number of people that we assign. Right now, we're talking about 2 persons per person sick. And that goes from anything from somebody needing insulin to somebody needing a few stitches because they cut themselves. So, you know, it sounds pretty simplistic, but if you imagine if you got 7 details and you have 14 personnel between agencies out there, that's until that person is released. And so that's 42 bodies a day assigned for hospital details. What we would like to come up with is some opportunities for way less people to manage those hospital details. Again, there have been times when I think it was South Point Hospital had a ward where we can have maybe only 6 or so deputies maintaining that whole thing, which would cut down the number of deputies and correction officers supplied. The other thing that would be is that if the infirmary that they actually do have, if that could be fully staffed, for example, I know that doctors do not work there on the weekends, and so those are things that could be done, I think, that really cut down on manpower. To imagine 42 people involved with 14, round the clock is a lot of people. And I think that is, what we're doing right now, although it's working, it's probably a lot better. We could do a lot more efficiently if we set aside some hospital space or increase the medical coverage at the current infirmary.
Gotcha. I would say for those conversations, either if it's you or your chief of staff may want to reach out to myself and Brent Narayan, who's the chair of public safety. I know we'll definitely be willing to have those conversations. Alderman Devotee.
Sheriff, I don't have any questions because I missed your presentation. I apologize. Step out. I will say that then, since you're becoming sheriff, I'm a baseball fan, and you remind me of a very good home plate umpire, meaning that at the end of the ball game, nobody knows your name.
Okay.
Because the game has been called so well.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
So thank you for your service.
All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Sheriff, for being here and your team and being a little patient as we was catching up from the water conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chairman, and we appreciate the opportunity to come before you. And again, we will be coming forth with some additional options for the city. And I think it'll be something that we can all appreciate.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I'll take a motion to go on break to 12:30 when we come back from the medical examiner.
Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 5th. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Or all in favor, no. Motion carries. We are back from recess. I will take a motion to come out of recess. Second, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're back and we're continuing our conversation on the budget for FY27. We have medical examiner currently that will be presenting their budget, and we will end the day with ITS, which is the technology agency for the city of St. Louis. We have the medical examiner director here today. Please state your name and if you got anybody here with you, and then you can go into your budget.
Good afternoon. My name is Tara Rick. I'm the Director of Operations, St. Louis City Medical Examiner's Office. And here with me today is Jason Hutchins. He's our Assistant Medical Legal Investigator Supervisor. So I want to thank the committee for having me here today. I'm going to provide an overview of our office and our mission, and then I'm going to go and do some specific line items, and any questions that you have for me along the way, feel free to ask those. So the mission of the Medical Examiner's Office is to investigate natural and suspicious and other deaths that fall under our jurisdiction by law. The other part of our mission is to foster public awareness and support the advancement of professional medical, legal, and legal education, and to protect the interests of deceased individuals, their loved ones, and the community we serve. The majority of our budget is 3 contracts that I'm going to kind of go into. The first being our professional services contract. This is going to cover the salaries of the board-certified forensic pathologists that perform every autopsy and certify every death certificate for every loved one that is in our jurisdiction. This contract is also going to include any fees that are associated with additional services that we would, for example, forensic anthropology to look at any of our skeletal remains cases, or forensic odontology, which would cover any of our cases where we would need the forensic dentist to look at those for scientific identification. The histology and toxicology contracts, those are going to cover the fees associated with every laboratory or histology, which is microscopic studies testing that we do. Those are performed by the St. Louis County Toxicology Laboratory. That's part of that contract. If the committee is interested, I can provide a fee schedule that breaks down just how the cost for each individual case. I can say that roughly, just an estimate, and every case is different depending on what type of testing that we're ordering. And this is outside of the costs associated with autopsies. It could be anywhere from around $700 to a couple $1,000s per case. Just bear that in mind as we talk through the amount of the contract. And the third contract that we have is for livery and mortuary services. That is going to cover the costs for the medical examiner's office dispatching that service to any call where we would need to have a loved one brought to the office. So that could be a private residence, it could be a public place, a hospital, a skilled nursing facility. There is not a change in the amount that I have requested for FY27 from FY26. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict how many cases we're going to be bringing in, so I'm going off of trends from prior years. So with that amount, the $450,000 for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, that allows us to have about 60 to 70 decedents that are brought in. That could go over, so every month it looks a little bit different, if that helps at all. So those are the primary three large contracts. And an explanation of that. In terms of any key changes compared to FY26 with what we're asking for FY27, in terms of our computer services account, which is 5600, this year we asked for $12,000. That is just to support and maintain and renew the case management software that we launched in April of 2025. It has been a significant asset to our office in terms of our case management and has really helped with our workflow. So that is just the annual maintenance cost. That's what that line item is. And then for professional services, account 5660, last year the request was $10,000, and that account was primarily used for any type of repairs that we would need for our equipment. You'll see an increase in FY27 to $87,124. That is for a security guard that the medical examiner's office implemented in October of last year. We did not have funding for it last year. It was something that we considered for several years, but this is through American Security. It is a city contract vendor. It became necessary for our office to have security. We're a 24-hour office, and oftentimes investigators on afternoon, night, and weekend shifts are there by themselves, and someone there for security, for staff as they're coming and going. We often have visitors to the office that come in various stages of emotion, and that just became necessary. So that is the explanation for that increase that you did not see in the prior year. So in terms of things that are, kind of driving costs that go up, we have seen, again, like we had during the time of COVID, we're seeing a I hope it's a short-term increase in PPE and things that the medical examiner uses every day, anything from gloves and masks all the way up to surgical instruments. We're seeing a cost increase in that, so that's something that we have to worry about. I am satisfied with the amount that's allocated this year, and that's stayed relatively constant. There's one decrease that you will see, and that is going to be in that toxicology histology contract that I mentioned. If you are looking at the line items, The request for this year was 600,000. I had that prepared prior to being able to see half of this fiscal year through. Again, we don't know what we're going to be spending because we don't know how many people we're going to bring in and what the cost of those tests are going to be. So I went ahead and took a look at what our spend was so far, and so far we're about 350,000. So I thought that that was fair to lower that request, since we had not been spending that the previous year. In terms of staffing, our current staffing levels are good. We do not have any vacancies. And the only change that we had this past April was moving one of our investigator 2 to investigator 3. And it was only a 10% increase in salary. And that was primarily driven by our caseload being high and one investigation supervisor not being able to handle the caseload and to move things through in a good manner. So that's going to be very beneficial. So we have 23 staff. We have 16 full-time and we have 7 part-time. We have 6 full-time death investigators. We have 5 full-time autopsy technicians, the director. We have an executive secretary who handles death certificates, and we have a records custodian who handles all of the requests from outside agencies, insurance companies, the public. They do so much more, but for the sake of time, I'm just summarizing. And then we have a custodian who handles the maintenance on our very large facility that requires a lot of specialized upkeep. And I think those were the main points that I wanted to share. If you look at the bottom line for what is being requested and what is being proposed, it's less than $200,000, and actually $100,000 of that is the $100,000 less that I'm satisfied with having for the toxicology contract, and then the remainder is for the security guard that was added on. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Director. And in order of seniority, Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you, Chairman. Your budget seems pretty straightforward, so just thank you for your service and what you do for our city. Questions?
Thank you so much, and I will share that with our staff. I know that would be much appreciated.
Is Alderwoman Velasquez still online? Alderman Devotie?
Yes, again, I would thank you for just out of curiosity.
Is your mic on, Alderman?
It is not. I apologize. I would echo the thanks. We appreciate the work your office does. From a budgetary perspective, if you could just educate us on caseload you referenced. How many examinations does the office handle? I know there's no such thing as a typical year, but generally speaking.
Sure. We're still in the middle of this year, but to give you some numbers for our previous year, the medical examiner's office took under investigation roughly 3,300 cases, and that may seem like a low number compared to the other offices in the region, but those are cases that were just investigated by us, and roughly over a third of those were brought in for forensic autopsy. So we did I think we did close to 1,100 last year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. This may be, I guess, a silly question, but I'm just curious. I know there's a lot of collaboration that you all probably do in line with the police department. Has the state control bill, even though that only has controlled police, have that legislation interfered at all with like your relationship with our local law enforcement men and women at all, or?
No, sir.
Okay. Like you said, I think your budget's pretty straightforward. It seems like you're happy with it. In a perfect world, there is no additional like employees or additional funds you will need for computer services or transportation or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Well, I do also echo the Alderwoman from the 7th. Thank you for coming. Looking forward to bringing the pay bill very soon for your office forward so we can help those hardworking men and women that do a great service in the medical examiner office with that 3% raise. And thank you, and thank you for your staff for all you do.
Thank you so much.
All right, with that, we will take a 10-minute recess till 1 o'clock. Take a motion for a 10-minute recess. Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 5th. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're returning for the last conversation of today's budget hearing. I'll take a motion to return to recess.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 5th. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will conclude with ITSA for their budget presentation. And in front of us, we have the director here to present their budget. Madam Director, you may proceed whenever you're ready. If you want to introduce yourself and introduce anybody you have here with you, you can jump straight to the budget.
I will do that. And I sent slides ahead of time. Did you guys get those? And are they going to be up on the screen, or do you need a hard copy? I didn't know if I should wait for them to be on the screen. No. Okay. Anybody need one?
We can, are you pulling it up, Madam Clerk? There we go.
Oh, there we go. Great, thanks. So I'm Cindy Reardon, the Director of ITSA. I have Walker Hamilton here from my development staff, the head of that division. The first slide up there is actually showing our two divisions. Systems development, which Walker oversees, does all of our solution designs, configuration, web team, the website, internet services support is under that branch. And then our second branch is network support services, the desktop support, network design, all of our security, cybersecurity switches, servers, file folder management, and that more hardware side of the house. So that's who we are. Next slide. The next one shows you some of our highlights from this past fiscal year that are citizen-facing and to some degree. Launched the My City. If you're ever on the city website now, there's a little blurb there on the slide that I put that shows you a little bit about what it accomplishes, bringing all of the different actions, transactions that a citizen might be doing with city government under one dashboard for them. If they choose to log in, they can go to the My City drop down in the top right corner of our website, authenticate using an email address, and then other transactions that they've done using that email address kind of brings it all in one place, one visible place for them. And that is, we soft launched it this year. We're adding more and more services to that as we do more integrations with our back office systems, so that will only grow to give citizens a better view of their activities, regardless of what city department they're working with. We're increasing, of course, delivery, cyber training, cybersecurity is always, of course, on the radar, and we're increasing our delivery of training to our city employees on that front. And we've added more online payment options for citizens in our city departments that are, if you're pulling permits, like Board of Public Service, parks, forestry, street permits, places where you might have financial transactions happening, we've added more online payment options. Getting into my fiscal year 27 budget, personnel services, we have a total of 54.5. We share one position with the health department. That's where the 0.5 comes from. We have a total, those are our total positions for fiscal year 27 in the draft budget. The biggest change from prior fiscal year is adding the 3 data analytics team positions and reorganizing our network support services division, which is that hardware server support side downstairs on the first floor. The Impact Data Analytics team is a team that was started under ARPA to do some data analytics, obviously, data analysis on things happening in city government, different city services. They did a lot of stuff with the building division and vacant building surveys, or vacant building data. They've transitioned into the Mayor's Tornado Recovery Office last year, and they are now expanding into the City Stat program, which Mayor Spencer launched last month to support using data to drive how operations align their resources, make decisions about their business operations. So that's a big need and a big gap to be filled and have them permanently part of our department. The restructuring of the network system services is just to flatten that organization a little bit, put some more middle management in the department, and present some learning, some growth opportunities, some career advancement for our staff, and make that a stronger division. On the non-personnel budget highlights, not a lot of changes from prior fiscal year. Computer equipment you will see is lower than last year. That's because we had an infusion of money last year to do our Windows 11 upgrades. That project has completed now. Computer services, a big project that we have coming up under that line item is upgrading our CityWorks software. Some of you might be familiar with that's the Citizen Service Bureau service requests. It also, once a service request comes in, it gets turned into maybe a work order or an inspection in the operating department to finish out that work. We're upgrading that from an on-prem system to a cloud. Trimble Unity is the same product, just a new rebranding of the same product and moving to the cloud. So computer services is, there's a line item for that under there. And then under professional services, again, that same upgrade, there'll be some consultants that will help us with that implementation. And under professional services, also our continued support for Oracle, the city's ERP system, and some savings as we decommission the mainframe this year. And I think that's my last slide. I'll take questions.
All right, thank you, Director. Star and Seniority, Alderwoman Sanye.
Thank you, Director. I am a frequenter of IT more than I would like to admit, especially when I had first came, because there was like an issue with the email that was, City Hall. But so thank you, because your office is always there. It's also responsive, and I'm also the queen of like forgetting to change my password in time, unfortunately, and I've not been locked out yet, thanks to you all. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
In regards to your budget, I don't really have any like too specific questions. I think that it is pretty straightforward and to the point. My only question is just kind of in general. I am curious just for you to speak to your interfacing with other departments and some of the technological, something we talk about a lot is that City Hall may really be in terms of where we are technological wise, and other like modern practices we are probably not even in the 2000s yet. And maybe are starting to get into the 2000s. And so I am curious just about any of your experience kind of with different departments across the city and technical challenges or things you've noticed in your role.
Sure. I think all the departments are very excited to be moving to new technology, and we sometimes, what from our point of view, we're trying to manage a portfolio of products that can be scaled to more and more departments. So I talked about the CityWorks to Trimble Cloud, the ERP system that moved off the mainframe a couple of years ago. We had other things moving off the mainframe. So in terms of modernizing, License Collector has done a lot of work to modernize and move off the mainframe onto that same CityWorks platform for licensing. So as we've developed a portfolio that has like, standard permits and licensing and work orders and service requests, or standard ERP, or standard software for whether it's managing our virtual meetings, our Gmail, our Google Workspace. As we have those solidified, departments are hopping on board and look at how we can move their business processes into those spaces. That helps us scale faster than departments feeling like they have to go on their own and buy their own software completely niche and not have us to support them. And then in a citywide sense, it's more easy to share data, to integrate those systems when we all work from the same platforms. So I would say departments are definitely reaching out to us and asking for that new technology.
I guess along those lines, I guess I do have one question. For computer software licenses, you have a $0 request, but then I see for last year you had 301,000. Is that because most of those licenses are still in duration from last year's budget?
No, I think what you're looking at is an account that has a suffix at the end. There's let me see if I can.
Computer software licenses.
There's computer software licenses, and then there's computer services above it. So there's a 560 account, and then there's that 560,001. That was just one particular software license was in that sub account, and we just rolled it up into the main 560 computer services account. it just didn't make sense that it was a standalone on its own sub-line.
Okay, I guess Alderman Devoti is right. I should have never said. It was my last question. Your Regis line for, this is 566069, and Regis is what kind of provides the data processing, like services and online systems for the police and the sheriff's department, prosecutors, courts, correctional institutions, that sort of thing. But I see that FY26 is at 70,000 and FY27 is at 230,000.
Yes.
So I was just curious about what the sharp increase was due to.
Yes, great question. That is part of our network systems services reorganization that we're doing. I mentioned that we were changing some of our positions to create some promotional opportunities for our network staff, but at the same time, we lost a network services administrator, a network services manager, and pivoted to having Regis provide us that network support to augment the loss of a position. So it gives us more depth, because rather than having one person that is the only person that has that knowledge, by partnering with Regis, we have more of a team that is supporting our network services.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Alderman Devoti?
Director Reardon, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for your work. I am one who has noticed over the last handful of years that our website, specifically accessing information, data, making a request, much easier today than it was. And in fact, I'm always amazed at what I learn at these hearings, and I admit my ignorance with respect to my city. I'm sure you saw me playing around with my phone. I logged in and created an account and verified my email address in about, 50 seconds, a minute. And I think that's an example of the wonderful work that you folks are doing.
Thank you.
Giving information accessible to our. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would like to give our web team a great shout out. Thank you for noticing that. They work very hard and are very diligent about making sure that what we present is the information people need, and that it's both accessible to folks of whose English maybe not be their first language, and also that we comply with any kind of ADA requirements so that anybody can access the information on our website. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm curious. So I know our mainframe is limited to certain stuff that can be like added or put on. Are there better like mainframe options out there for the city, and have those like been conversations of what it looks like to maybe change kind of our mainframe for the city of St. Louis?
Yeah, so when I started in this position about 8 years ago, we started taking a really hard look at all the different businesses that were operating with the mainframe as their technology hub. And we started to just one by one look at how do we move that business operation to something new. So the mainframe is just a platform. You can put any kind of software on it, just like you can put any kind of software on different servers. So the really large one that came off a couple of years ago, you've talked about Oracle a couple of times, that was moving the finance HR systems off of the mainframe. So what we've been doing is not looking at is there a different platform for the mainframe, but just moving people off the mainframe altogether, because software companies now are moving, of course, to more hosted environments, cloud environments, more modern database structures that you can have APIs, which is a glorified way of saying integrate data from one system to the other. So earnings tax just recently moved off. Collector Daily recently his team worked very hard to find a new system and move earnings tax to something new. License collector's office moved off this year. We had some retirement system data still on the mainframe that has moved off. So we are now planning in this coming fiscal year to decommission the mainframe, meaning everything's off. We just need to sort of double check that we've got all of our data saved where it needs to belong and that we're ready to turn it off.
Gotcha. And it don't look like there's much of a change in the budget, but it seems like from what requested and proposed with salaries, was that due to trying to get additional position?
the increase in personnel expenses, yeah, it's besides just the natural increase of all city employees, you know, they're 1.5% or 3% that they budgeted in. There's those 3 new data analytics positions that we brought over into our budget that were on the mayor's tornado recovery budget prior, and ARPA prior to that. And then there's some movement of positions where we took lower pay grades in that network systems side of the house and created some middle management pay grades. So all those combined.
And then the other, I guess, change, and I think maybe the Alderwoman brought this up, was the computer licensees that was requested about 5 and received 4. Was that the Regis, or was that a different?
No, that the license that was in that 560,001 account was actually the CityWorks software licenses. For whatever reason, 8 or 10 years ago when we first bought CityWorks, they gave it its own sub-account, but all the other software licenses that we pay for citywide are in the general 560 computer services. So it just got rolled up to make accounting easier.
Gotcha. All right. So all the questions I have. Thank you for being here, Director.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right. With that, that will conclude our presentation for today. Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
We have none.
Any announcements from any members? Everybody was present. We're going to announcements. Tomorrow we will kick off at 9:30 with SEMA at 9:30. Then we'll hear from BPS at 10:30. The Circuit Attorney's Office at 11:30, a short break, and then end the day at 1 with Neighborhood Stabilization and CSB. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 5th. All in favor, aye. No opposed, motion carries. Have a good day, everybody.